Hey everyone, Danny Vaughn here, and once again launching into another episode of my Q&A sessions, which I'm happy to say seem to be kind of popular. So we'll keep them going, and if you would please, if you're enjoying these, if you like this one, hit subscribe or hit the like button. All that really helps the channel. And if this is your first time checking it out, I ask people to send me in their burning questions, whether it's for me or members of Taiketo or whatever. Send them into my website, dannyvaughn.com, and I keep a list, and we'll cover one at a time as we go. Heading off to Australia soon. Going to do some live stuff from there for you as well, where we'll talk to the whole band and get their takes on international travel and fear of enormous spiders. So this time we're going to cover. It was Beverly Lowe that asked me a simple but deep question, which is, when did it all start? When did you know that you wanted to become a singer? The short answer is I'm not sure I ever came to that conclusion. I found myself in demand through friends, and you're in high school and you're 15, 16, you're in your first bands, and somebody discovers he can sing a bit, get him over here. And so I was always getting asked to stand in front of people's bands that were learning, like Steppenwolf and the Rolling Stones and things like that, and sing. And so even when I wasn't necessarily driven that way, I mean, as a little kid, when you ask where did it all begin, I'll tell you one of my mother's favorite stories, which is that I was a very, very loud, very attention deficit, wild, running about, tiny little kid with a very high voice. And I think if I had been born 20 years later, they'd have just put me on medications right away. But they didn't really do that back in the mid-'60s, whatever. So when we moved to New York City, at that point, I was already performing in the house, and back then stereo systems all had enormous speakers, and I used to hide behind the speakers and sing along with the Beatles and poke my head around and say, "You can't tell it's me, can you? You can't." So there was something in there, but as far as actually doing it, making a living out of it, doing it in front of an audience, that didn't happen until I changed schools and had the tremendous good fortune of going to the Rudolf Steiner School in New York City, where there is such a big arts and music program. And they didn't know what to do with this crazy kid either. So they said, he makes a lot of noise, let's stick him in choir. And within 2 months of doing that, I would have been 11 years old, they did a roughly Christmas time presentation in a church and all this, and we were doing a hymn called the Pie Jesu, and the part that was written for the soloist was actually written for the castrati. That's how high my voice was. And so they gave it to me to do, and I hadn't had a growth spurt yet. I was really quite small. And my mother used to love telling the story about how the choir was singing and everybody's like oohing and eyeing over their kids, and then everyone drops out but me, and I start singing the solo, and she said everyone in the church starts doing this, trying to figure out, and I was kind of hooked at that point. I was like, everybody's looking at me, and let's face it, that's my job. I turned it into a living. As far as getting into bands, again, it was rarely my choice. When I moved out of my parents' house, when I was 18, I moved in with a couple of buddies in Brooklyn. We shared an apartment. I was working at a t-shirt factory in downtown Manhattan. And I don't know that I had any plans, but apparently I'd made enough. I'd been in a band or two, and a guitar player named Jeff, who was in my first band, he lived in Rockland County, New York. He and his drummer drove all the way down from Rockland County into Brooklyn. It's a couple hours. And said, "You're coming with us to Rockland County. We're going to a zoo. We got to talk." And during the course of visiting a zoo in the middle of winter, they were like, "What are you doing? Why aren't you singing? We need a singer. Come live up in Rockland County. We'll make money that way." And I think that's kind of really where it started. And I started to look at it as potentially as a profession. But again, I was always fortunate that people sought me out. I wasn't the most proactive. You know, I got involved with Wasted because Paul Chapman sought me out. He'd heard about me through someone else. So it was a lot of luck, and eventually I got it through my thick head that this is what I was going to do. So that's basically the answer to how it all got started in a convoluted, roundabout sort of way. So thank you, Beverly, for the question. Again, thanks, everybody. Please hit like and subscribe if you would, and send your questions in to me, and we'll cover another one in the near future, probably from Australia. All the best. Bye-bye.